your great name, all condemned, feel no shame at the sound of your great name. Every fear has no place at the sound of your great name. The enemy
Are you really great? I pray, Father, that through the lives of your church, that we can shine so bright against a dark canvas that, Father, that your light is seen and that your love is known throughout this whole country. I pray, Father, that people who are hurting and people who are even right now in the process perhaps of losing homes and losing their livelihoods, Father, I pray that they will see Jesus in us and that your people will be about making your name known in all the earth. I thank you that even in the midst of tragedy, we can call you a good, good Father. In your name we pray. Amen. And you may be seated. Hey, can you believe that next week we have been here 1 year in this building? I love that. And there are times it seems like it has gone by kind of slow, and there are times where it seems like it is like whoosh, it has rushed right by. I am hoping that next week, we have always set kind of little attendance goals. When we were 100, we were looking for 150, and we were 200, we were looking for 250. And now we would love to have 1,000. Not 1,000 people, just have 1,000 people, but 1,000 people who need to be rescued. And what I'm hoping is next week you will bring your friends, your neighbor's dog, your neighbor's cat, whatever they might have, and that they can be a part of hearing that we don't want to be just a church that was and got in here and quit, but we have a vision for this community and something that you can actively be involved in, and some things that are going on right now that are going to manifest itself right around the first of the year that we want you to know about and be a part of and to be able to tell you about and show you. So I'm hoping that it will be as exciting to you as it is to us to say to this community, this is where we're going, and this is what we'd like to do, and we would love for you to be a part of this journey with us. So next week, bring whoever you can and come excited. I hope that you will. I'm not sure where Dan went, but thank Dan for last week for letting Lynn and I get away for a weekend. September 1st is was her birthday, and it will be September 1st again one day, and it will be that. So she had asked this year, could we go somewhere just for the weekend, and it was nice to get away and to do that. Let me ask you, I'm going to start this morning with some audience participation. How many of you are not very good at waiting? You have a problem with patience. Let me ask you another question. How many of you are sitting beside someone who should have raised their hand, but didn't raise their hand? Right up here on the front. You know, they have some tests to see if you're a good waiter or if you're not a good waiter. And I found several of them online, and I thought I would share them with you. You perhaps are not a good waiter if you have ever gotten so frustrated at the gas pump that the gas won't come out so fast that you just stop midway through and put the pump up and say, I'll fill the rest of the way up later. And that's you, you're probably not a good waiter. This may apply to a younger generation a little bit more than mine. I don't know, but sometimes it upsets me. Have you ever gotten upset that it takes 6 seconds for your cell phone GPS signal to travel through space, find a satellite, grab your coordinates, and send it back to your phone? If that takes 6 seconds or more and it frustrates you, you might have a problem with waiting. And then this one. Have you ever gotten in line at a grocery store, but kept up with where you would have been had you chosen any other line in the grocery store? Then you might not be good at waiting. Chuck Swindoll, in one of his books, he includes a letter that he received from a woman. Her letter went like this: Dear Chuck, I love your sense of humor. Humor has done a lot to help me during my spiritual life. I mean, how else could I have raised 12 children starting at the age of 32 without having the sense of humor? I'm married at the age of 31. I didn't worry about getting married. I just kind of left my future to God's hands, but I tried to do something. In fact, every night I hung a pair of men's pants on the edge of my bed. I knelt down and prayed this prayer: Father in heaven, hear my prayer and grant it if you can. I hung a pair of trousers here. Would you fill them with a man? Swindoll said, I laughed and I kind of put that at the front of my Bible, and it came in handy because a few weeks later I was able to use that in a message series. he said in the audience that day was half of one family. A father and his 20-year-old son had been able to make it. The mother and their daughter had not been there that morning because the daughter had gotten sick. Well, several weeks later, the mother who had not been there that morning, the mother who had not heard the story, the mother who had not heard the little prayer, I come with hair, pants here, please fill them with a man, who didn't know any of that, writes this letter to Chuck Spinall. She writes, "Dear Chuck, I'm concerned about my 20-year-old son. She said for the last week or so, he has been sleeping in his bed with a bikini draped over the footboard. I need to know if there's anything I need to worry about. Father in heaven, hear my prayer and grant it if you can. I've hung a pair of trousers here. Would you fill them with a man?" We're starting a new series today, and I kind of like new series. I like series that we get in because I get in and they get going, and then there's that kind of anticipation about starting a new one. But once we get going, I love those well. But this series we're calling The Land Between. And I hope as we go through this today, you'll see why we're doing that. There's a book called The Land Between by Jeff, I think Minion is his last name, and a lot of what we're talking about is discussed in that book. But the question is this: what do you do when you're in an in-between space? You're not where you were, but you're not where you want to be. Sometimes where you were is a good place compared to where you are now. Sometimes where you were was a bad place compared to where you are now. Either way, you're wondering, do I go back? Do I go forward? What do I do? Another question a lot of people ask when they're in those between moments and when they're in the land between is this: what do you feel that you can do when there's nothing you can do? What do you do and how do you react when your situation is such that a lot of us have found ourselves in, and if you're not there now, there will come a day where you will be, because every one of us face the land between us. The land between, I'm not quite certain where I've been, what I'm going through. I don't even really know where I'm going. A season in life where it just, as people say, it is what it is, and I can't foresee it getting any better. When you're at those places, you usually wait. I know a lot of people who wait. I know a couple of people right now who wait for a job. In talking with them individually, they often wake up in the middle of the night, or sometimes they can't even go to bed. When everyone else is in bed, they sneak downstairs and they look over their finances and they look at their checkbook and they grab a paper, they get on the internet and they scour and they look for the dream job that they once had, or a job that will at least pay the bills. I know of a mother who is waiting. She lost a child a little over a year ago. And she's waiting for the emptiness to subside. She tries to ease that a little bit at times by being with other people and being with groups of people, but that conversation in her mind is forefront and it keeps coming back, and she is scared to go back at times because she's scared she brings them down with her talk. I know some single folks who are waiting. They're single now, but they'd like to be married. They're the ones who are a little bit more fun to talk to because they tell you all the things that they've done, and they've not only prayed, but they've gone on a banana diet or a coconut diet, and when that doesn't work, they go off their banana diet or off their coconut diet. They join the gym, they drop the gym, they go to singles events, and they try to find things, and some of them get so courageous they can try to organize things, and I love those type of people who just see something that needs to be done and just jump in and do it. But in their darker moments, there are times where they say, you know what, sometimes I just buy into the world's definition of loneliness, and I go out and do things that only end up making me more lonely. I'm just looking for someone to go through life with. I know a couple who are waiting to get pregnant. They're doing a lot more than waiting physically, but there's a lot of other things that they wait on too. They wait on finances to get right. They wait on the next doctor's appointment. They wait on the next clinical test to come through. They want a child, and they just keep waiting. I know some people who are waiting to recover from an illness that somehow they know it's not going to kill them, that it's just not going to get any better either, so they're waiting for the pain to go away. I know a lot of people and have met over the last 5 years, a lot of people who were waiting on the son or the daughter to come back home. Wives or husbands who were waiting on their marriage to get better. I'm not a good waiter. It doesn't take long to find that out. I never really liked waiting, and I especially, and if you're a parent of a 16-year-old or more, you probably know this, I hated waiting. After my kids first got their driver's license, I hated that first year waiting to hear the car pulled up in the driveway again. It was a long wait. They never understood that. But for Linda and I, it was a waiting. I don't like waiting outside ICU units for friends. I don't like waiting on tests to come back. I don't like waiting for people who are in a lifestyle that they need some type of recovery from. I don't like waiting to hear that they're trying their best to come back around. For those of you, and perhaps because we have dived in and are doing so much research and work with the Tim Tebow Foundation with kids with special needs, I have met so many of you whose children struggle with whether it's a special need, like I always defined it, or a special need in which I'm learning more of how that is to have a child that has Asperger's or a child that's on the autism spectrum. I'm waiting for the day that you have a normal conversation with your child, a time that you can just sit down with them and just have a day that seems easy. Waiting is not very popular. To most, it almost seems a waste of time. And maybe it's because we live in a culture where nobody likes to wait anymore. We live in a microwave culture where everything is done so quickly and we want everything so fast. And I want to pull up at the pump and I want to get it done. And I want to go to the grocery store and I want to find a line that nobody is in. And I just want to get in and out. And so it almost seems like the problems or the issues in my life should be solved the same way. For many, that land between, it's like a desert place, between where you once were and where you're somehow trying to end up, but for right now it just seems like a desert. In the book, The Land Between, he compares it to the children of Israel leaving Egypt. Egypt was a fertile ground, and if you look at the land of Egypt on the satellite, it was really green. And if you look at the land of Canaan, where they were going to, it's also very green from a 20,000 point view or foot view in satellite. But if you look in the middle of where they are, it's just a dry, barren space. And the children of Israel, whether they knew it or not, even when they were in the land of Egypt, they were in a land between. They were in a land between for 400 years. And finally they think they're leaving, and they're going out, and they are, and they're headed towards the promised land. They're headed towards the land that God provided for them, but they're not there yet. They've got 40 years yet to wander in the wilderness before they head off and get into the place that God has for them. And they're in this land between. So what do you do when you're there? You can quit, but there's something inside you that really doesn't want to quit. There's a part of you that says, I'm just going to give up and walk away. But deep down, that doesn't seem to be the right answer. I know parents sometimes who, out of frustration, will look and they'll look and they'll say, I'm just going to give up on my kids. I'm going to wash my hands of them and I'm going to put them somewhere else. But deep in their soul, they can't do that either. People who say, you know what, I'm not sure how it's going to work out. I'm not sure how we're ever going to be happy. And I'm just going to abandon everything I know. But they can't do that either. You can drink yourself into oblivion or even unconsciousness, but that only brings more problems than it creates. And even you look around at other people and they seem so happy. And invariably, when you're in one of those places, and for you it's so serious, you'll come to a church building, you'll come to a service, and you'll meet somebody who's in a happy place. Or you'll run into them in the line at Walmart, or you'll meet them on a ball field somewhere, and they'll look and they'll say, wow, God is working in my life. He's doing so much. And you look and you ask, well, tell me about it, because I'm in a place where I need God to work for me too. And then they start telling you this story, and your eyes are just like, because they're saying, well, the other day, I got a And all of a sudden, my great husband, and he called me on the phone. It was early, and he said he's coming home. And he said, hey, I remembered I got to get my oil changed today. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just change yours too because I'm a good husband. And isn't that what good husbands do? So would you run out to the car for me and look at the little sticker in the corner and tell me what the date is? And if your needs change, and I'll just make an appointment while I'm there, and I'll take yours and I'll get it changed. And lo and behold, I went to do that. I opened the car door, and what was there on the front seat besides my Coach purse? Hallelujah! Thank God he answered my prayer so quickly. And you are thinking, oh dear God, give me patience, because if you give me strength in this moment, I'm going to hit this woman. Because your problem is so much more than you lost your keys or you lost your purse, and you're there thinking, I do not want to be in this lady's small group. I don't even want to be a part of what she's doing because I'm not even sure I like her at this point. Because for you, it isn't a purse or a set of keys, it's an illness, it's a divorce, it's a husband, it's a child. And you wake up one morning and you think, this is my new normal. And it just is what it is. And I don't know how to go back. And I don't know how to go forward. And I'm not praising God right now. In fact, right now, I'm doing what maybe a lot of people in the state of Florida or Texas are doing. I'm actually wondering where God is, and I'm wondering if he really does care about me. And you know, when you're in one of those land-betweens, you tell yourself certain things. You tell yourself things like, I don't know if I'll ever be happy again. I don't know if I'll ever be whole again. I don't know if my faith will ever get back to the point where my faith is, and I can't even imagine anything good coming from this situation. So welcome to the new series. And you're thinking, oh, I'm glad I came here for this because this sounds like a downer. But I'm hoping that through all of this, that we will be able to look to a place and get back and look and at least have thoughts where I know God is working and I know God hasn't abandoned me. And maybe the news doesn't get better before it gets worse, because I would like to tell you that I can stand up here and I'm going to give you the perfect answer. I wish I was that good. But there is no perfect answer. And as much as you may struggle with certain things, I've often wondered, and I think as I took this, for 21 years I didn't do this. For 21 years I went into an office and worked with an income statement and a balance sheet, a tax return, and they didn't have the things that we struggle with here. And so I look at people like Trent and Haley down here, and I look at Dan and people who are in the positions that we're in, and I wonder if our doubts are even bigger, because not only do we struggle with the ones that we have internally, we often struggle with the ones that you bring to the table too. And I don't know how many times I've sat across the table from someone and only tears would come because I'm thinking I'm struggling with that very same thing that you're struggling with. So let me stop right there and say, if you're in one of those land-betweens, the best thing that you can do is to get into a small group of people. The best way that God has to provide healing is through people. So in those land-betweens, don't shy away from people, and you might have to try 2 or 3 different groups before you find just the right one. But it is through people that God is often seen. And I'm going to tell you, there are people in Florida, there are people in Texas, and there are people even right now in New York City as they look back on the anniversary of 9/11 who were wondering where God was and what happened and how in the world all of this came about. And the thing that's going to help them bring healing is when God's people step up to the plate and shine a light against that darkness that is so bright that they can't ignore it. And the gospel of Jesus has a chance to spread best against a dark background. And at the epicenter maybe of this struggle, especially if you're a Christian, goes back almost to a little prayer that we pray. Or maybe it's a prayer that as a parent that you taught your children to pray when they were young, that God is great and God is good. But it's in those in-between places, isn't it, as adults, that we question both of those things. It's in those in-between moments that we wonder whether he is great and whether he is good. One of the things I think that helps me more than anything when I look at this, not having great answers, but I hope having answers that help, are this. I'm always glad to know that I'm not the first who wondered that. And I'm always glad to know that I'm not the first person who had doubts, that there were people before me who had doubts, and there are people after me who will have doubts. I look at the book of Hebrews and everything right around Hebrews 10, 11, 12 that those people went through, and I realize that many of them lived and died in a season of doubt, yet they were able to remain faithful to a calling that was so much bigger than what they individually were. How did they do it? How did they remain faithful in the midst of such tragedy? So I like to know I'm not the first that did it. I've heard people say before when we look at the fall, and that's kind of where we're going to end today. The fall of man in the book of Genesis. Not that we're at the end, but when we get to the end, I'm kind of giving you a preview of the end. There's a fall that's coming out there, and I've often heard people say, "Well, don't you wish Eve had never eaten that fruit, whatever it was? Aren't you?" Kind of mad at her because she did that. I mean, if she had never done it, we would have never gone through all the stuff that we're going through now. And I look back sometimes and I think, no, I'm glad that she ate it. I'm glad that she took a bite because I know something about myself. If we had lived perfectly for the 8,000 years that had been since then, I would have gone to the garden and I would have eaten the apple. And I would have been the first one in history. And all history now would look back and say, it was Tom who did it. It was Tom who caused all of this. I like it that it was somebody else. That I can look back and say, well, it was Eve, she did it. Because I know deep down the same thing that I bet each of you know. That in a fallen world, we each have things that come into our lives that remind us of our fallenness. And it gives me comfort that I can go to Scripture, that I can look and I can say, you know what, I'm not the first one who had doubts. And I'm not the first one who wondered. In fact, the very people who brought us the resurrection of Jesus Christ were people who had some of the biggest doubts in all of history. And it gives me encouragement to know that you can be a follower of Jesus and still at times have doubts in how he's working and the way in which he's working. So we're going to look at one of those just this morning, a guy who had some doubts himself. His name was John the Baptist. That's how he's most commonly referred to. Actually, literally, it's translated this, John the Baptizer, because that baptizer was kind of telling what he was done. As in today's society, there are a lot of Johns out there, and if you say John, sometimes you have to know which John you're talking about. Are you talking about this John, that John? Now, is it J-O-H? Is it J-O-N? There was just a lot of Johns. In their day and age, there were a lot of Johns out there as well. So this John the Baptist got this reputation because he was out in the desert and he was baptizing people. So when somebody wanted to refer to that John who was baptizing people out in the desert, they would say, John the Baptizer, the crazy man out there in the desert baptizing people. And they were like, oh yeah, I know which one you're talking about. I took a trek out there. I met him. Aunt Martha was baptized by him. They knew which one it was. So you've got John the Baptizer who was out in the desert. And everyone had heard of this guy. And you really can't understand the significance of his story going forward unless you understand a little bit of what happened in his background. John the Baptist did a lot of work and a lot of ministry towards the bottom of the Jordan River, right around the Dead Sea. And in that area, it was ruled by King Herod Antipas. You may remember him. It was Herod Antipas' father that had been responsible for the death of all the baby boys during the birth of Jesus' era. So now you've got John the Baptist. We're 30 years past that. You've got John the Baptist out in the wilderness preaching. He's baptizing people near the Jordan River. And now this Herod has a son. He's grown up. His name is Herod Antipas, and he's the king of this region where John the Baptist is preaching. Well, Herod Antipas has a brother named Philip. Well, his name is also Herod. Herod Philip and Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas is the king. Herod Philip is the brother. They have a niece, and her name, anybody remember? Sounds like Herod? Herodias. They kept it all in the family there. All H's before anybody else thought of all that. These people have H's. You got Herod Antipas, you got brother Herod Philip, and then you got a niece, Herodias. Well, all of a sudden, Herod Philip marries his niece Herodias. They don't even do that in Alabama anymore. And it's happening over here. Sorry, the Alabama folks, I had to throw that out. And all of a sudden, this is happening. One day, Uncle Herod Philip and his wife, niece Claudius, are together, but Uncle Herod Philip gets called to go to Rome. And while he's going to Rome, you know what his wife day and age. They don't have a free press thing, so you don't talk about the king as in some places in the world today you don't talk about the king. But there's a man living who decides to talk about the king. His name is John the Baptizer. And he is not politically correct. And he is out, the forerunner of Jesus, preaching a gospel of repentance. Preaching a gospel that says, if you want to see the kingdom of heaven come, you've got to turn from the way you've been living and you've got to go in a different direction. Well, to make his point, he keeps pointing to the sin of Herod Antipas and of Herodias. Well, they get mad at John the Baptist, and Herodias finally says to her husband, who is the king, and also her uncle, she looks at him and she says, put that man in prison. So Herod Antipas puts John the Baptist in prison, and he puts him in prison in a town called Maracus, or Machaerus, I think it's called, my little dictionary told me. And it's in the desert, and they take John to this place, and Herod had a palace there that sat kind of on a hillside, and in the bottom of this desert palace that he has is a dungeon. And in this dungeon, this hot, barren dungeon, is where they put John the Baptist. And so he's there in prison, and he stays, and he stays, and he stays. And the longer he stays in prison, the more his doubts begin to grow. And he's just like us. The longer you stay in that land between, isn't it, the more your doubts begin to grow. Now here's what's interesting. Jesus loved John the Baptist. In fact, Jesus' mother and John the Baptist's mother were relatives. And Jesus and John the Baptist were cousins. And they loved each other. And the crazy thing is that at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, everyone knew who John the Baptist was, but nobody knew who Jesus was. So one day when John the Baptist was out baptizing people in the Jordan River like he would do, along comes Jesus. And John the Baptist sees him and he looks and he says, behold, it's the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. He looks at all the people who have been following him and he says, look, there's somebody else you need to follow. Don't look at me anymore. Look at this man. I'm not even worthy to stoop down and untie his shoes. He's the one you need to follow. And Jesus looks back to the people and he says, let me tell you how I feel about John. Comes in Matthew 11:11. Truly, truly, I tell you, among those born of women. Now that's a big statement because that's like everybody, isn't it? I don't know anybody who wasn't born of a woman. He says, of all those people who were born of a woman, there is no one greater on this planet. There is no one who is more for me. There is no one whom I am so in touch with and so thankful that they're doing what they're doing than John the Baptist. So John gets arrested. Forerunner of Jesus, baptized Jesus, announced his arrival to the world. What do you think Jesus will do when he hears that his cousin, his friend, the one who says there is no one greater, is in prison, has been arrested? Matthew 4:12, when Jesus heard that John had been put in prison. And in my mind, I'm thinking he's going to write the next episode of Prison Break. I mean, he's going to go in there and he's going to do for John the Baptist what he's later going to do for Peter and John when they get thrown in prison. And they're just going to shake the prison cells, and he's going to turn Herodias into a pillar of salt. And even if he doesn't do all of that, he's going to send a cake and it's going to have a file in it. And John the Baptist is going to get out and they're going to go in there and they're going to slaughter Herodias, and it's going to be on a TV show one day, and all of this stuff is going to go on. But none of that happens. None of that happens. So what does he do? When Jesus heard that John had been put in prison, he withdrew to Galilee. Leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum. Now let me show you a map of that area. It's right up through here. I wish I could have found a bigger one. John the Baptist was preaching right around this area. And that area there was all the area of Judea where King Herod ruled. And this Machaerus is right over there in the desert. Notice that it's in the brown because that's desert. They were in the green because that's kind of lush, fertile land because the Jordan River is flowing through there and it's water. John is in the desert and Jesus is up there in Nazareth. And when Jesus hears that John is in prison, you would think that he would go, well, guys, come on, let's go way down here and over here to visit John. But he doesn't. He leaves Nazareth and he goes in the opposite direction to Capernaum, a city by the lake. I bet you right now there are people within the sound of my voice who feel that your greatest problem, you feel that Jesus went in the opposite direction. That when you felt you needed him to come towards you, all you could feel was emptiness and loneliness because it seemed like he was going in the opposite direction. What do you do in those moments? What do you do when you have those moments where you want Jesus to come one way and he's going another way? Matthew tells that he withdrew and he went to Capernaum. And it wasn't just that he stayed right around there where he had been. I mean, he goes up. He goes to a totally different place. And if you could get on a plane today and you could go visit that area of the Caris down there. And you could, there's a hill there now. That's what it looks like today. It's still a dry, barren place. And that hole that you see in the middle is an archaeological site where they had dug down and even found where they think the dungeon might be, where John the Baptist might have lived. And if you were John the Baptist and if he had had a window, we don't know if there's even a window in the desert, this is what your view would have been. And I guess if you like brown and shades of brown and hot, sweaty, no water environments, this is your place. And Jesus wasn't looking at that. In fact, Jesus went to Capernaum, and this is the town of Capernaum. Looks a little bit different, doesn't it? And this is a scene in Capernaum. And it seems funny to me, but while John is down here in a hot desert place in Capernaum, Jesus has gone to Destin, and he and his guys are hanging out at the Margaritaville place. And John feels that. So John doesn't have Jesus coming to him at that point, but he's got some friends that go to him. And let me tell you again, sometimes I think Scripture is very prophetic and it's very purposeful in what it writes. Do you know that most of the people in this world will never see Jesus because Jesus comes directly to them? Most of the people in our world will see Jesus because you went to them. Most of the people in our world will see Jesus because there was another human being who took upon themselves the courage to go and to get out of their comfort zone and to be Jesus to somebody. And so John has these friends who come to him, and he looks at them and he says, I would like you to do something for me. Most people believe at this point in time, John has been in that prison probably up to a year and a half. And after being there a year and a half, he looks at these guys who are visiting him, and he says, this is what I would like you to do. Would you go back and would you find Jesus wherever he is? And they got to know where he is. Would you make the trek up to Capernaum, and would you ask him a question for me? And in Matthew 11, verse 3, we see the question. They find Jesus, and they ask him this, are you the one? Are you the one? Are you the Messiah that I was waiting on? Because right now some things don't seem logical in my mind. I mean, our mothers were best friends. Our mothers were relatives, but I'm in prison, and you're in Capernaum. I saw you coming that day, and I announced your arrival, and I told the whole community who was coming out to see me, don't look at me, look at him. He's the Savior of the world. He's the one that's going to take away. He's the one that's going to pick up and in some way carry your sins away from you. Look at him. I'm not even worthy to untie his shoes. I lifted you up, and you're up in Capernaum, and I'm down here. And in John's mind, those two things don't go together. So he says, in his message to Jesus, are you really the one? Are you really the one? And I bet in our world this morning that there are some people maybe within your sphere of influence who are wondering if they're the one. Who are wondering if the God that they have followed all their life is still the one. I followed you, God, when it's my home right now. I followed you, God, when it was my husband, when it was my wife who were in those towers so many years ago. And we often have the same question that John had. Are you really the one? And Jesus has a strange reply, and this is where I got to go quickly because we're practically out of time. And I want to finish this. Jesus looks back at these guys and he says this, you go tell John what you see and what you hear, that the blind are seeing, that the lame are walking, and that those who have leprosy have been cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are being raised, and the good news is being proclaimed to the poor. And there is so much wrapped up in that answer. But I think when you boil it all down to it, what Jesus is telling these friends to go back and tell John is this, that John, good is still happening. That there's a lot of bad going on out in the world, and you don't understand where God is right now, but I need you to know something good is still happening out in the world, and that evil may exist, but evil has not won the day. You go tell John that we live in a fallen world, that ever since Eve ate that fruit, and mankind, ever since that day when Adam and Eve, that first Adam, took that, we were under a curse. And it wasn't just that man was under a curse, and it wasn't just that man began to die. Paul says that all creation began to die. That all of a sudden nothing was the way God intended it to be. That oceans didn't act the way oceans were supposed to act. And they didn't stay within their boundaries anymore. And the earth that was supposed to be perfect all of a sudden wasn't perfect. And there were fires and there were earthquakes and there were tragedies that came about. And people who were supposed to be perfect and look out for the best of each other, all of a sudden there were people who flew planes into buildings. And there were people who raped other people and murdered other people. And John, you live in a fallen world. And all the brokenness that you see is just an example of that brokenness that occurred because there was a curse put on everything. It wasn't just a curse that man had to die. It was a curse over all creation. But the good news, if there is any good news, because that's the depth of despair, that is the consequences of living in a fallen world. The good news, if there is any good news to all of that, is this. In the same moment that God pronounced a curse on the world, in that very same moment God pronounced a way of salvation to the world. And God said, I am making a way where there seems to be no way. And in a world that would curse you, Tom, I'm going to find a way to redeem you. And in the very same breath that said we live in a fallen world, he said, I'm going to find a way to lift you up. And I'm going to find a way to make you whole again. And God's justice was seen at the cross when mercy stepped out. And I know at times that God seems distant and he seems inattentive to what we're doing and he just doesn't seem like he's around. But folks, the goodness of God is no longer on trial anymore. And although it looks at times as if God isn't paying attention to us, maybe I can illustrate it with a story about my son, and it is a little close this morning. There was a time when he was about 2 years old, and my wife and I had bought a VCR. If you're my age or older, perhaps you know what a VCR is. If you're younger, you may not know what a VCR is. It was like the pre-DVD days, and you had like a reel-to-reel tape inside this little plastic box, and you would go to a store where they had all of these lined up along the sides of the walls, and you would rent one, and you would take it home with you. And you would put it in this little VCR and it would play. And I remember the day they started selling these tapes in the stores, and wow, they seemed like they cost a fortune, but Linda and I had saved money. We saved money. We bought one of these VCRs. We came, we brought it home. And the first movie we bought ourselves that we didn't rent was Lion King. And Aaron watched Lion King 1,001 times. He watched that movie. We were probably bad parents for letting him watch it so much. But he watched it. There came a day, when you wanted to watch something else, you'd hit the little eject button and Lion King would pop out and you would get your other tape and you would put it back in there. But one of the time Aaron knew, he would pull his little stool up, he would go to it, he knew which button to push and Lion King would pop out. But this day Lion King didn't pop out. So he decided to fix it. So he went somewhere in the kitchen and he got a butter knife and he got a fork and he came back to his little stool and he began to fix the VCR. And he was going to dig Lion King out of there if it was the last thing he did. And many of you were saying, where were you and Linda when all this was happening? I'm thinking, I don't know where we were. And he fixed it so well that it was unfixable. And all of a sudden, we had to decide what we were going to do. And he had torn up the VCR that I had purchased. And I could have done a lot of things in that moment. I can try to explain to a 2-year-old about cost. Aaron, do you know how much this cost? Do you know how many sleeps that you had to sleep for me to be able to pay for this VCR? I could try to get him to pay for it himself, couldn't I? Aaron, you are 2 years old. You need to get a job. You are not going to have a VCR again until you get out and you work and you pay this off, so you better learn to own some cows, buddy. But any of you who have a 2-year-old know that they can't understand enough cost. And you know that to a 2-year-old, there are a lot of things that cost so much that they could work a lifetime and never pay it back, don't you? So, Linda and I decided that we would start looking around, because I wasn't just going to go out and buy the first one that I saw, because in a world of technology, even way back then, surely there was a newer one in the market. It might cost a little bit more, but we would start saving and we would start building for the day that we would buy another VCR. But Aaron didn't understand all of that. And while Aaron thought that I was oblivious to his plight of not being able to see Lion King, his father wasn't oblivious to it. His father was trying to make a way to pay for it. And while Aaron would get angry at his dad at times, there was really no way that Dad could adequately done and how broken it was, and there was no way that he could fix it, but that I, his dad, was trying to make a way to fix it. But when the time was right, and when we had the money, his dad did what every good father does. He went to the store, and he bought a new VCR. And he paid for what Aaron did. The dad took what he had, and he paid for what the child had done. And he came back home, and he put the VCR there, and the son was so happy. And the dad was even happy, because the dad liked to go to movies too. But there was a period of time in there that everybody suffered the consequences of a broken piece of technology in our house. And in a much, much deeper way. How could the Father adequately explain to us a fallen world? A world where oceans don't stay within their boundaries? In a world where earthquakes kill a lot of people at times? And how could the Father adequately explain to us what our sin did? So in a moment that showed the goodness of God more than any other moment, God took what he had and he paid for what we did. And ever since that day, in my mind, God's goodness has not been on trial. My faithfulness is what I'm looking at. And I go back, and even this passage ends with this verse, "Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me." It's Jesus looking at his best friend in prison, and he says, you tell him that in a world gone bad, that there are still good things that are happening, and that you can shine best, John, in a dark world by shining the light of Jesus, even when you can't feel it, when you feel abandoned, or you feel he's silent. Because I can rest assured of this, John, he has not abandoned you. And he is not silent. He is working, and he is doing something. And blessed is the father who doesn't fall away when his job gets lost. And blessed is the mother who hangs on when it seems like she should let go of everything. And blessed is the teenager who remains faithful to a calling when everything else around him seems to be falling apart. And blessed is the guy, the mother, the wife, the grandmother who loses her home but doesn't stumble on account of a fallen world. Blessed are those people who don't fall away because of me. And in a moment that I like more than any other moment, there was another John. Another John who would be struggling on an island by himself. A John who was boiled in water and left to die, but he didn't die. Now they exiled him to an island. And he wonders the same thing that first John wondered. Are you really there? Do you really care? And Jesus gives John this incredible glimpse into heaven. And in that glimpse, that John would later write, while on that desert island, scarred from the beatings and the torture that he had been through, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And out of that new heaven and new earth, let me tell you, there was a river, and it flowed right out of the throne of God, and it stayed within its boundaries because it was the way God meant it to be. And there were no more floods in that place. And I saw in the middle of that city along that river, there were trees, and they were always in bloom, and they always had fruit because there were no famines in that city, and there were no hungry people in that city, and there was no curse on that city. In fact, there was no darkness in that city, and it wasn't because they had lights, and it wasn't because the sun that shines above us was there, or the moon was there. It was because the glory of God was so bright. And in that city, he said there was no more death, and there was no more pain, and there was no more suffering, because finally things were the way they were supposed to be before the fall. And he looks at John and he says, John, that's the world I've made for you. And that's the reason I hope that you'll hold on. In the midst of tragedy and in the midst of a world gone bad, I hope that you will hold on to the fact that God has not abandoned you, that he has not forsaken you. And you can be mad at him, and you can blame him, and he will take it because he knows something that we don't know. The same thing that I knew that Aaron didn't know, that there was coming a day when he would have bigger and better than he ever had before. It's that in-between place you got to hold on. It's that in-between place. He says, don't let go. It's that in-between place that we're going to talk about how to survive in over the next 5 weeks and in your small groups. Father, I thank you for today. I thank you for loving us. I thank you, Father, for reminding me that you have not abandoned us, that you have not left us. And I pray, Father, that everyone within the sound of my voice, that in the midst of tragic times, that we will shine the light of Jesus against the dark world that is so bright, there is no mistaking that there is a God in heaven, and that he is still great, and that he is still good. Thank you, God, for taking what you have and paying for what I did. In Jesus' name.
Just a moment when we dismiss, you're going to have an opportunity to give. Remember, there's 3 giving boxes located here in the auditorium, and then just a few more right outside those doors. Feel free to drop your connection cards in there as well. Remember, though, if you're a guest with us, hold on to that connection card. Take it out these doors out here and go to a place that we call the green room. We'd love a chance just to connect with you a little bit more here today. Tom will be in there as well. Tom told you earlier that next week we are celebrating in a really big way our 1-year anniversary. Be sure to invite your friends, your neighbors, share the word on Facebook as well. But we would love to see just a crowd of people gather so that we can share some good news and some awesome things that are happening right here in our community. Trust me, you will not want to miss next week. If you haven't already, you can check the back of your connection card to sign up for Starting Point. All you got to do is check that box, turn your connection card in, and Lisa, who's right there, will send you an email this week just to confirm that we've got you down, that you will be there. And then last, but definitely not least, if you have not signed up to join a life group, you can do that today. You can do that right now. Go right outside these doors. You'll see Dan standing at that life group's booth. We believe that rescued people do life together. We believe that you walk through these moments of the land between in a life group. And so go and find those. We're going to dismiss. We're going to play some music back there. And in 10 minutes, go Titans. Y'all have a great week.